I would take a Super Bowl this year and we'll be bad for the next 30 years, just personally. But
you say that, but having covered the Eagles, I know that people say that in the moment, and then it's like, oh wait, but now they're 7-10 a year later. I think Atlanta, the finale was the best performance of his career, but I think a close second was Green Bay. His rookie year. You'll see more of that the more that he gets an opportunity to be a little bit more chill. Those games were shootouts. I think he's going to go down as the best draft pick of the last 3 years. Nice. You can put me on record there. I see a lot of AJ Green there. Like, the game comes so easy for him. Princely, a lot of fans wanted Josh Sweat. Well, they got Josh Sweat, only 4 years younger.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how familiar were you with GloRilla before the past 3 or 4 days? All right, so we are here with Mike Kaye from the Charlotte Observer. Mike, thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I don't do a ton of collabs. This full disclosure. So I do play nice with others. I just have a crazy schedule. So when I do have guests, everybody knows it's special. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, I appreciate the invite, Aaron. I love what you do. I think you're really important to the Carolina, content creator community and media community. And I think you've really established yourself amongst your peers as one of the best in the biz. So thanks for having me.
Gonna make me blush, man. Gonna make me blush. First things first, let's start with the important stuff. On a scale of 1 to 10, how familiar were you with GloRilla before the past 3 or 4 days?
I knew the name.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I heard a song or two.
Okay.
Now I'm really familiar.
Okay.
With lyrics. I got to just some inside baseball, but I guess Vashti put it out there. But I got to Bryce Young's charity event, and I'm typically the first person to ask questions. That's just kind of my role.
Yeah.
I'm the icebreaker, I guess. And before we got started, I just was like, how can I mellow this situation out? Because there was a bunch of people in a really packed room. And I was just like, Bryce, have you heard any, or have you seen any good music videos lately? And he thought about it for a second and then went, oh, and then started laughing. So that was a little bit of fun there. But now my GloRilla knowledge has gone up, trifold, I would say, over the last week.
Did you know GloRilla is short for Gloria Hallelujah? That's her first name.
No, I did not.
Yeah.
Wow, now fourfold.
I honestly think she should have went by that as her rap name. That would have been better than, GloRilla's clever, but Gloria Hallelujah is it's a real name too. So shout out to her. But speaking of her and the affiliation with Excel, I think it's a good segue. What do you think about the off-field success? I know a lot of fans are about it because he had an up and down rookie year. I know you've written about him having that rookie wall and just some of the struggles with the drops. He even fell on the sword himself recently when you guys kind of talked to him and just put it out there. He was like, hey, I dropped the ball. I have to catch the ball. I went through with the coaches. They said that there's not a lot of things wrong with my game outside of catching the football. So, what's your thoughts on that and just his self-awareness about where he's at?
I think he's actually really self-aware. And I think, in talking to Rob Moore, his wide receivers coach, I put out this huge story, or not huge story, but long story about, Rob's outlook on the misconceptions on Legette and T-Mac, who I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
I think that it would bother people if he wasn't such a hard worker behind the scenes. And that is kind of the gist that I get with Legette. I think he is somewhat misunderstood. Now, the production speaks for itself. He was terrible the second half of the season, just flat out. But I also think it's important to note with the injuries that he had most of his success when the quarterback position was not delivering and was most chaotic. And so I think there's a reason for optimism there. I think you really saw the foot injury hinder him. He's already a very weird strider. And I think when you have kind of an awkward stride to begin with, the foot probably doesn't help. I think he was putting a lot of pressure on himself to play a lot better. But from basically everyone I've talked to, he is a really, really hard worker. And I think, he showed up to Bryce's charity event straight off that music video. That was his first appearance off the music video. He could have big leagued, but he was there. And he was very interactive, very welcoming. He's the type of person that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room when you talk to him. As GloRilla, astutely pointed out, he is a charmer. And so I think for him, he seems a lot happier than he did towards the end of the year. I think self-confidence, especially a wide receiver, is really important. And look, I mean, does it kind of remind me of Michael Olamakendi and Van Wilder, or like Darius Miles and Van Wilder, or I'm trying to think of somebody who's like early in their career probably didn't deserve the glow up right away, but got it. But I mean, look, it's a new age. It's everybody's on their phones now. Everybody's interactive, and everybody's got their own brand. And I think Instagram and social media have really kind of raised the profile of players. And you only get to live this football life once. You might as well do it while you can. And if you're working hard, who's to judge you?
Yeah, I mean, he seems like a fun dude. Just seeing the interviews you guys have with him, it seems like y'all have a lot of fun talking to him. I think that's the kind of draw for him: the personality, the accent, of course, and just him off the field being interested in horses and all this stuff. He's just he's had a crazy run. I mean, I have a Christmas card that Fanatic sent me, and he's like one of those voice ones, and his voice is reading out like some kind of Christmas poem. He's just been on a crazy run, but he's been on the field recently. You guys have been at practice. Just me watching clips. He looks a little bit more spry, looks a little bit more sudden. Do you think that foot procedure, I guess, has really done some wonder for him? Because you've kind of characterized his run style as, I forgot what you said, something about him galloping or whatever. But
yeah,
do you see any difference in the way he kind of moves?
Yeah, I think I've used a couple of different iterations of this, but he runs like he has pebbles in his shoes and fire in his heart. Yeah, I think he's looked a lot more smooth. He got a screw put in that foot. And I think, look, his game is crossers. I think they had him running too many, out routes and too many goes. That's not his game. I mean, he is a guy who you could look at him, like, weirdly enough, I think he compares more to Jordan Matthews than anybody would kind of like to admit. And where if he's running slants and he's running posts, it's really hard to defend him because he has such a big body and he has understated speed and he can break tackles. And I think part of drafting Tetairoa McMillan is kind of to open that up and underneath stuff. Like, I think they think he can do some of the Deebo Samuel stuff, but Deebo Samuel isn't a number one wide receiver. He is not the focal point of an offense. He had Brandon Ayuk. Now he's going to have Terry McLaurin. If he does sign a contract extension, which he definitely deserves.
Yeah, they got to pay.
I think, he's best off as a number two wide receiver. I think playing that Z role, giving him space, not having him focus on contact immediately, then getting free, then working your timing route, then catching the ball, giving him less to think about. And not that he can't handle more to think about, but you want to set your guys up for the best success. And I think his game speaks to that Z role a lot better than it does the X.
Yeah, so and I think the system, the alignment versatility is key. It makes a match personnel a lot. I mean, obviously T-Mac can line up outside, inside. XL can do the same, like I said, playing that Z spot. And talking about T-Mac, adding him to this unit, what do you think it says about just where they are as a team? Do you think it's more of like a stamp of confidence in Bryce to give him more weapons? Do you think it's something that was just like, hey, Canales really likes these big body receivers that can kind of really unlock what he wants to do? Or do you think it was just like team building prowess and the way they kind of characterized it, that they felt that it was a drop off at the receiver and they felt good about the edge group? Do you think it's just kind of all around team building, or do you think there was actually intent behind that particular move to go get him at number 8?
Yes. Basically all of that. Yes.
Okay.
I think you summarized it really, really well. I think that last point about wide receiver drop off, I think is very, very astute. I think there were only two options at wide receiver from an upgrade standpoint, and that was McMillan and my guy Matthew Golden, who I think is going to lead all rookies in receiving yards this year. But that said, I think McMillan really fits what they're going to try to do. This is a timing offense, as you know. He is a guy that, look, I thought they should have added speed, which they later did with Jimmy Horn.
Yeah.
But I think big guys beat up little. I mean, big people beat up little people. That's just kind of the mindset now in the NFL. It was something Chip Kelly talked about all the time in the Philly. So you're a 5'10", 5'11" corner. Well, guess what? You're going to have to cover this 6'4", 219-pound wide receiver as he runs go routes and catches 50-50 balls that are now going to become 80-20 balls. I think like that's the logic there. Is like instead of single coverage being deterred by speed, it's going to be deterred by size. So now you need a safety to double team him, similar to how Julio Jones got double teamed, right? Like, so I see a lot of AJ Green there. Somebody randomly brought this up to me on social media, and I was like, I'd never thought about that. But then I went back and watched the film, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally see it. Like, the game comes so easy for him as far as catching the ball, getting space. He's not fast. He's kind of deceptively quick. I love kind of what he does in space.
Yeah.
But also I love what he kind of does in a crowd. He's got kind of like a Gumby-like ability.
Yeah.
There's a play, I'm trying to remember what college it was against, but there's a play where he catches the ball, literally pivots around 3 guys, and then picks up like another 20 yards. Like, he is a basketball player playing football. In a lot of ways, which AJ Green, I think a lot of people would compare that as a prospect. Yeah. I've been talking to people around the team, and something that wasn't really brought up in his draft profile was his intelligence. And from what I understand, he is really engaged in meeting rooms. He is asking a lot of really good questions. He's very mature. I know that video is out from when he was like a lot younger, but I think so far he has passed the test as far as maturity and flying colors since he's been in the building. And listen, it's June. Like, right. Stuff can change. We all know that. Deontay Johnson was getting along with everybody and a good teammate by and large by July and August. So like what I would say is I think he fits kind of what Dave Canales wants from a personality standpoint. He fits what he wants from a intangible standpoint. And I think, look, the way the wide receiver market is going, like I just saw a report that the Patriots offered Chris Godwin $30 million a year. $30 million for Chris Godwin? Are we like for real? Like
off an injury.
Yeah, off of injury. Like, I mean, T. Higgins, again, another guy who I think is better off as a number 2 wide receiver. He is more valuable to the Bengals than he would be to another team. When you look at stuff like that and everybody's trying to build their Chase Higgins, Brown Smith, Ayuk Samuel, like sort of wide receiver duo, doing it on the cheap is a lot easier, especially when you know you're going to potentially have to pay a quarterback contract down the road. Yeah. You're going to have to continue to build this team, and I think 2026 is a very big year for the Panthers. 2025 is big too, but I think 2026 is no excuses, just win, make a run.
Right. No, I don't disagree, but I personally had a 2-year mark on it just because we see so many teams turn things around fast, and it's not always realistic per se. You have to have the right people in the right place. You kind of got to get lucky as well. There's a lot of things that have to go well, and I'm not even talking about health, which is usually the biggest factor in terms of the NFL and making a deep run. But I guess you and I watched your podcast, and you and Alex went through the schedule, and I think your prediction was what 7-10 or 6-11.
He had 7-10. I had 8-9.
Okay, and
then,
go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no. What I would say to you is, I think the Panthers look at this as they want to contend for years, like several years, as opposed to being like the Dolphins or I'm trying to think of another example, or the Giants, where they got to the playoffs, everybody was stoked, and then they immediately had a drop off because guys left, or they had regression, or they lost a coordinator, or what have you. I think this team is building long term. And I think when you look at the Bengals, that was, just out of necessity, they have built long term. I think when you look at a team like the Chargers, they tried to build long term. It didn't work out. They get a better coach, and now they're a little bit better. Like I think there are two ways of going about it. There's having that instant gratification where you kind of overload and get lucky, or you're building so that you can not rebuild in the next 2 or 3 years. Because as much as I think people would be really stoked by a 10-7 year here, if the follow up was 6-11, well then what was 10-7 about? And you just lost maybe the first round of the playoffs, right? Like, so I think it's about the end goal. I think it's about building a long term competitor. Whether they're going to do that and whether they're right is a whole other story.
Yeah, I personally, me being a fan for so long and being starved of any type of success or significant football in January or December outside of the magical Steve Wilkes run, I would take 10-7. I would take a Super Bowl this year and we'll be bad for the next 30 years, just personally. But
you say that, but having covered the Eagles, I know that people say that in the moment, and then it's like, oh wait, but now they're 7-10 a year later, or 4. Like, I get it, man. Look, there are no excuses this year. If they are not in contention for the division this year, then something is drastically wrong. And I'm not saying don't have hopes for the playoffs. I just don't know that they are going to make the surge that everybody is asking for. Listen, if they go 9-8 and somehow get that last wild card spot or win the division, this is probably a 9-win division.
Yeah,
as it always is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be great, but I think their end goal. I think if you ask anybody in the building, getting 9 wins is not what they want long term. They want to be an 11, 12 win team for years to come, and in order to do that, they've kind of paced out the way that they're spending, the way they're allocating resources. Listen, I don't blame any fan for wanting to win now. You guys have dealt with 7 years of this.
Yeah,
I get it, man. I get it. I've perfected the losing lead in a story. I understand. And I also was there in Jacksonville when they came off basically a decade of losing and then went to an AFC championship game. I know how electric that can make a city. I know, a market like this could really benefit from a winner. I also just covered the Savannah Bananas, and they packed that place with 74,000 each night. And that was the best attendance I've ever seen since covering the Panthers. So I know that there is a love and an interest in this city. I think Panthers fans get a tough rap, and you guys deserve a winner. But I'd also say long term, I think what they're trying to accomplish makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question in terms of what do you think is, I guess it's twofold. I'll ask it in 2 parts because you guess you left. I don't know if you were covering Philly still around 2022. I'm looking at your LinkedIn, just FYI, to line up the dates.
So I got here 10 days before Matt Rule got fired.
Okay. All right. So I'm just kind of thinking about the trajectory and just in terms of comparing Bryce to Jalen, because I know that 2022 season was really like when he absolutely took off. There were big question marks about him coming into that year, and he absolutely, I mean, obviously they did a lot more roster-wise, but there were just big questions about him coming in, and he was an MVP candidate. He really stamped himself. It got him paid, and that's kind of what set them up to go all in. I'm wondering, like, just the vibes that you feel. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl, so it's kind of a hard stretch, but just the vibes of, like, what do you think a Bryce Young big year could do for this team? Could it accelerate the timeline of what you're talking about in terms of just how they compete or how the team feels in terms of during the season, if they made an aggressive trade or signed somebody off the street or something? Do you think it alters their timeline if something like that was to happen, or do you think they're kind of just going to be fairly disciplined like they say they're going to be?
Well, I think with Jalen, the situation was a little different. They had kind of a ready-built roster for the most part in that 2022 season. Obviously, so I covered his first 2 years. I covered his rookie year and then his first year with Sirianni when they were like rebuilding, and they still made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Another, situation where it was a quick turnaround, but most of the COVID year was a lot of injuries and Doug Peterson kind of losing the locker room in a sense. I think that a common trait that both guys have is they can lead anyone. And I think that is really important. Beyond that, I don't think they're comparable players.
Yeah.
I think Bryce, here's a comparison. If you take Bryce's rookie year off the table, I know you can't do that as somebody, whatever. I think his final stretch last year kind of compared to Hurts's final stretch of his second year, in that it wasn't great. It was very good and it was very encouraging. He has not arrived. He has not. I don't think you can say he's earned anything other than to be the QB1, right?
Right.
I wouldn't put him in any top 15 list. I wouldn't do any of that stuff. That said, when you have a little bit of success in this league as a quarterback, it can propel you significantly. I think there's an argument to be made that he didn't have a lot of weapons around him. The same could be said about Jalen Hurts. That rookie year he had Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and no one else. And so I think, having McMillan, having Legette maybe mature and healthy, and mature as a player, as his talent wise. Yeah. I'm not saying that he was immature. Sorry, I don't want that to be misconstrued.
You're good.
And having Thielen and having Jatavian Sanders, whose game is maturing. I mean, he looks terrific. I'll tell you, last year, I didn't think he looked like he was in terrific football shape. This year, he looks fantastic.
I said that myself. He looked a little soft in the midsection. That's kind of how I judge athletes, and I think that's kind of why he fell in the draft. His combine performance wasn't the best, and his athleticism just didn't translate like I thought it would from what we saw at Texas. But I'm glad to see that, what you're saying, and how he looks and the movement. That's the number one thing I wanted from him, just naturally coming into your body and just making those changes.
Yeah, I think Legette, I think you're seeing a lot of player professionalism maturity there. Because Legette looks bigger. He looks like he's in terrific shape. And I think having some of these weapons, having an offensive line that's returning, every guy's back, and then some, I think if there's stability at center too, I think that'll help him a lot. I think he has to do what he did those final 5 or 6 games throughout the season to really kind of reach that next echelon. But I think it's in him. I'm not running away from this. I'm big on accountability, as you know, Aaron. We've talked about it before.
Yeah.
I remember breaking down C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young during the draft. And I naturally gravitate towards C.J. Stroud because I'm a pocket passer guy. Carson Palmer is my favorite quarterback prospect of all time. Yeah. That's who C.J. Stroud reminded me of.
Okay.
But I completely understood why the Panthers took Bryce, because he was the most dynamic on film as a college prospect. And if anybody wants to dispute that, I would love to watch film with them. He was significantly more dynamic. I think CJ was a significantly better passer, more accurate. But I think if you're just doing it based on film and not necessarily projection, I think Bryce was more dynamic. And I totally understood that decision. Now, that said, so far, CJ Stroud has outperformed him exponentially. I think if Bryce is set up better, as with any quarterback, I think he can have some more success. I also think it might help if he's not having to put up 30 points a game every single game. That's the thing is I don't think people realize how much that weighs on somebody. In baseball, when you have a pitcher and he's got a 2.1 ERA, but his team can only score 2 runs a game, he's going to have more losses than he's going to have wins. That's just the reality of the situation. And I think Bryce has been kind of put in that situation to kind of stress on every drive. And I think if we saw him kind of, I think Atlanta, the finale was the best performance of his career. But I think a close second was Green Bay, his rookie year. And I think you'll see more of that the more that he gets an opportunity to be a little bit more chill. Those games were shootouts.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would agree. I think Green Bay was more so of what the Bryce Young we know from college, buying time, being creative, getting outside the pocket. The Atlanta one was okay, this is the element of his game that he has in terms of just using his legs to hold defenses accountable when they try to run man coverage because they have confidence in the lack of weapons that we had, and just really making them pay on the ground and through the air, in which we saw down the stretch against the Cardinals. The Giants game, it really came out as well. Just, I think that's the element that really shined, and I think the next level that he can go to continue to press that button, not necessarily be somebody that, I mean, Philly kind of spied him a few times, but nobody really accounts for him in the run game, so he can make them pay when the opportunity is there and just not being hesitant to do that. Real quick before we'll do one more question before we just do a quick rapid fire and wrap up. Your thoughts about why this year the team may not be able to. I'm assuming it's the defense. So I guess what are your thoughts in terms of that? Because I know you've been on record talking about Avero not really leaning into young guys, but there's a lot of young guys now, and with the exit of Jadeveon Clowney, we're going to have to probably lean on these guys. And kind of on the blueprint, we heard their idea for Scouton and Princely is going to be probably behind Wanham and Jones to start out with. But what are your expectations for the defense as a whole? And like, what kind of impact do you think those young edge guys have early on and just in general throughout the year?
Yeah, let me go into the young guys thing real quick, because I think I've been taken out of context by other people, and just based on what I've seen, I get text messages all the time, and I'm like, I didn't actually say that. Like, I've seen people say, like, Mike Kaye said that he doesn't like rookies, or he doesn't like starting rookies, period. No, he has just not been quick to start them in seasons. Typically, he's had if you look at, with Bradley Chubb, he had Randy Gregory and who's the guy they traded to Miami?
Bradley Chubb.
Bradley Chubb, right.
Yeah.
So, they're not playing Nick Benito right away, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I think with the Panthers so far that he's had, Trevin Wallace, Jamie Robinson, Shaw Smith-Wade, right? Like, those guys were later round picks for the most part, and they had guys in front of them. And so I think that's part of the issue. They don't have that issue this year. Nick Scorton and Princely Umealan should be rotating with each other. I think you could look at Scorton as more of like the parallel to Pat Jones, and I think you can look at Princely as more of the DJ Wadham of the two. I think most defenses, you want a speed guy and you want just a combo guy. You don't want a dude who's too like, I mean, there's DJ Johnson who's specifically there to sit the edge. He has no pass rush whatsoever. But I think when you look at DJ Wanham, he's more of your weak side edge rusher, so is Princely. I think you look at Scorton and Pat Jones, they're guys you can move inside, outside. One of the most impressive things that I heard from Nick when he got drafted was that he watches a lot of Brandon Graham film. And if you know anything about Brandon Graham is a guy who could be used basically everywhere. He's a guy who's not going to give you 10 sacks a year typically, but he is so important from a versatility standpoint, from a pre-snap standpoint, and he's an exceptional run defender. That draft pick to me showed a lot of maturity, forward thinking. Nick Scorton's 20 years old.
Yep.
He's growing into his body. He's just lost 28 pounds. He had great production at Purdue, pretty good production at Texas A&M. He by and large is a studier of the game. He's a student of the game. I think he's going to go down as the best draft pick of the last 3 years. Nice. You can put me on record there. Okay. Better, more important than McMillan, more important, maybe even, I mean, if Bryce works out, Bryce works out. But but I think from the standpoint of value, from the standpoint of age, from the standpoint of long-term, I think Scorton is a guy who can immediately give you something in the run game. I think Princely, a lot of fans wanted Josh Sweat. Well, they got Josh Sweat, only 4 years younger, and he's tremendous. I think Princely's going to be an immediate contributor as a pass rushing specialist. He can stop the run. I don't know that I'd put him out there on early downs. I just think he'd pin his ears back. Like, you remember like how they used Marquise Haynes like for most of his career? That's how I would use him as a rookie. The long-term outlook is Princely and Princely and Scorton starting opposite each other. But I think from a rookie standpoint, you want to lean on Wadham. He's in the final year of his deal. You want to see what he can do. He's healthy now. Well, for the most part, he has that back flare up. And then Pat Jones, they were really excited about before the draft. I'm pretty sure they're still excited about him. He's a guy who's going to move around a lot too. I think you've got like a pretty cool like upside top four there. I wouldn't be surprised if Princely and Scourton each had 5 sacks apiece, which I think would be a great outcome. If you can combine those two for 10, I think that feels pretty good. And then you've got Pat Jones and Wanham out there early, setting the tone. But I would not be shocked if Princely and Scourton are starters by the end of the year.
Does the defense, is that the reason why you think the team doesn't go to where, I guess, like a division title or whatever to take that huge step? Is that the kind of your biggest hiccup?
I think there's just so much change that it's hard to project. We also saw how important Derek Brown was, and we don't know what Derek Brown's going to look like after meniscus surgery. I'm hearing rave reviews about Turk Wharton, who in my opinion, should probably just be a rotational pass rusher. And I think that's initially what he will do. I think they're a lot more confident in him as a run defender than I am. Because if I were an opposing offense, I would just run at him every single time. I mean, he's like 6'1", 280, especially if they're in an odd man front.
Yeah.
Bobby Brown, though, if Bobby Brown works out, I'm just telling you guys, the nose tackle is here to stay in a very big way. I think they are really high on him. I think the Cam Jackson pickup was great. But again, you're going from historically bad run defense, historically bad scoring defense, to saying, hey, here's a bunch of new pieces, right? I think they are a little light at corner. I think their safety plan will surprise some people, and I don't want to give up too much there, but I would say they're going to use Merrick in a lot of different ways. I think they're really high on Lathan Ransom. Damani Richardson's going to get a shot, and I think they'll be patient with the secondary depth a little bit more than I probably expected after the draft, but
yeah, for sure.
Look, I think it's just like I wouldn't be stunned if they won 10 games. I think if you're predicting a team to win 8 games, you have like kind of a sphere of 6 to 10, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think you give or take 2. Maybe they'll surprise us. Honestly, I was pretty high on the Frank Reich Panthers, and I was wrong. So maybe I'm wrong again. Who knows?
That's funny. Yeah, the gamble on the secondary is interesting. Maybe they use the front to try to play front to back. It's a good way to go. I know Vero talked about getting knocked back in the run game is their biggest thing versus whatever they were doing, which is whatever the opposite of knockback is last year against the run. But yeah, I'm curious. I think 8 or 9 wins is fair. I agree. I think 9 gets the division. I think there's question marks pretty much everywhere except Tampa. I mean, if you want to throw a question mark at Tampa, this is their 3rd coordinator. It can't, fourth. It can't keep working out. I mean, granted, they have the talent, of course, but it just can't keep working out with their offense. I mean, and sometimes it was a struggle. I mean, Canales, it was a struggle for them at times as well, and they figured it out eventually because this division is just that bad that you have time to reinvent yourself during the season and still make things happen. It's a long year. But
yeah. I think. Sorry to cut you off, but I think the key to this division is winning division games. If you can win division games and you can beat the teams that you're expected to beat, you will have at least 8 to 9 wins.
Yeah.
I think a lot's going to be made of the schedule about the road trips, but these road trips are against teams that have just as many questions as the Panthers. And if they can steal a couple, I think they're going to be in really good shape heading into the second half.
Yeah, and they play the right teams at the right time of year in terms of weather and climate too. So, final thing is Jair Alexander. The news came out today. He's a local guy. The connections are there. I have my thoughts about him that may not be that agree with most fans. What do you think about the potential of him at? Do you think that's a realistic option for them? Obviously, him being a free agent makes him a lot more attractive than trading for a guy that's only played 14 games in 2 years, was getting a huge contract. But for all intents and purposes, according to PFF, at least if you're into that, if he's on the field, he was a top 10 quarter rated by them. Funny how they dinged J.C. Horn for being injured, but not Jair Alexander. Whatever. But final thoughts on that. Do you think Jair is a realistic option?
I think it's going to come down to price. I think playing 34 games in 4 years is a really tough sell, especially for this group. I think you've noticed that in how they've done their signings. I think DJ Wanham and Jonathan Brooks were lessons in handling injuries, but also projecting injuries. I They just paid JC, who, in my opinion, is the sum 41 of corners. Does not get enough credit for what he does musically. Does not get enough credit for his leadership. Does not get enough credit for his ability to make big plays. Does a lot of things away from the ball. Some 41 does everything away from the ball. They're not play, but I think that JC needs to be the guy in a room. I think it's time. I think this is Derek Brown and JC's defense. That's what it is. And I think adding Alexander on a 1-year deal that's probably structured in a way that it's like heavily incentivized. When you just paid Mike Jack, look, Mike Jack's going to regress. He literally played at the most optimum level you possibly could. That said,
he played all 17 as well.
He's probably an average number 2 corner at best, right? Yep. Like if we're being like 100 on that one, I mean, I think
I agree.
Here's what I will tell you. Here's what I will tell you. Shaw Smith-Wade is getting rave reviews behind the scenes. They love what he's doing in the film room. Every time we've been out there, I mean, I guess it's only 2 times, but he has made a play.
Yeah.
I think watch out for him as a blitzer this year, because I think Merrick gives you coverage in a way that he can kind of move around and be available pre-snap. I also think you're going to see some different wrinkles from the defensive front that open up spacing. I'll leave that at that, but I'm sure you can figure that out as a film guy.
Yep.
And I would say too, like, I think I wrote this in the Access Panthers newsletter, sign up for it for free on charlotteobservers.com. I think they like their cornerback group a lot more than anyone else does, for better or worse. Like, I do think they really like a Caleb Evans.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Shamar Bartholomew, another guy that they've really liked. Corey Thornton's a guy I saw at the East-West Shrine game. He's getting pretty positive reviews as well. And I think some of these free agent corners and safeties, they just want a ton of money, and they're not like kind of realizing, hey, it's, almost, it's mandatory minicamp week and you're not signed. Like, there's a reason. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle the secondary. I don't foresee Alexander or Jalen Ramsey for that same reason. I expect them to be patient. I think rollover cap's going to be huge in 2026. I know that's not something fans want to hear, but that's kind of what this podcast is about, right? Just the truth. And look, I covered Jalen Ramsey the first 2 years of his career. He is exceptional. And frankly, his star tape at FSU is the best film I've ever seen of a defensive player, ever. That's not hyperbole. Go back and look. I remember at one point asking a former teammate of him, like, we've got to talk about the star tape. Why did he move to corner? And he just moved to corner because, like, basically they had no one. Because I think LaMarcus Joyner went to the pros, and it was just, like, basically him. I think he could help this secondary in a lot of different ways, but he's also plus 30. His contract, if you trade for it, immediately becomes guaranteed based on, like, purpose. And even if the Dolphins are willing to pay some money for it, it's like, are you just going to do this for a year? Like, what's the long-term plan here? And again, I think it's really important that J.C. Horn is kind of the voice of that secondary. I think they're going to try to make Merrick, Brown, and Horn kind of like the pillars of the defense. If Bobby Brown or Scorton immediately works out, maybe those two guys are interchangeable there too. But I do think they like the youth movement. They like where they're at cap-wise, and I think they like where they're at trajectory-wise.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear about Shaw. He was probably my biggest question mark. Switching to nickel is not easy, and I think just seeing what the Cooper DeJean move did for the Eagles defense last year, just him actually moving inside, just showed me the importance of the nickel position in this system, being used as a linebacker in the box and being able to hold up. But DeJean's 200 plus pounds. Shaw Smith-Wade is not that. Being used as a blitzer and coverage, just the toughness on the outside and the perimeter, especially with as much nickel as we play and just the NFL in general. It's a key position. It's almost a starter at this point. So
I think it's the hardest position to play on defense, really.
Yeah.
And here's what I'll leave you with this nugget. I think they're going to platoon nickel. I don't think that nickel will be a solely Shaw Smith-Wade sort of equation.
Thinking Richardson? rotating probably.
Think heftier paycheck.
JC.
Mm-mm. Come on, I'll give you one more.
Is he off the streets? Oh,
No.
Maury.
Yeah,
Oh,
Barry.
okay.
It's going to be the. I think he's gonna. You'll see him kind of move around the secondary.
Okay.
I think they're going to be very, very versatile in the way they use personnel. Would be my guess.
Yeah, I have a video coming out soon about the front and the different combinations they can use, just because I like the skills that the guys have, the inside out ability for a lot of the guys, and just the things they can get creative with. But you said it's a lot of moving parts. We'll see how long it takes for them to click. Obviously the seat is hot with Ejiro, but it is what it is. You guys make sure you sign up for the Charlotte Observer, the Access Panthers newsletter.
Yeah, the Access that one's free. And then we're running a sale right now, $199 per month for 6 months. Just click on one of my articles, subscribe. I don't know, not to toot my own horn, but I don't know that anybody goes into football detail the way we do when we cover training camp. And I know you guys can't be out there, but if you're looking for a way to view it through a beat writer's eyes, we're going to have you covered. Alex Utlow, Scott Fowler, myself. Have a lot of good video, a lot of good stuff. You can see my X handle right there. You can follow me on Blue Sky. I'm on there as well. And come interact with us. I like to chat and talk ball with pretty much anyone.
No offense to Alex and Scott, but you are the reason why I actually am a Charlotte Observer subscriber. And I haven't been for years, but I did, I think in January of this year. I think you guys had a special going on, something like that before the offseason. So I went ahead and
that means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah. And of course, I'm on the Access Panthers newsletter as well. But yeah, you guys know where Mike is located here at the bottom in the details. We once again appreciate Mike for taking the time to come by the channel. Big time respect for you. I appreciate you tuning in. All right, guys, we're out of here.